Well, I'm back. This video has been a very long time coming because I interviewed Stephen Arnold almost a month ago because after the holiday break, I got COVID and then my computer broke, so I completely disassembled it and then rebuilt it from scratch into this monstrous overkill beast. I can nerd out on this thing a lot because it's a computer that I wanted to build a year ago, but I couldn't get the parts for. Let me know in the comments what you think of my first computer build and if you'd like some more info on the stats. After I had this AMA with Stephen Arnold, the CEO of Fracture Labs, which is the developer behind Decimated, I can confidently say that I'm more excited to play this game than any other, blockchain or not. Obviously, this isn't financial advice or anything. It never is. But I think DIO is crazy undervalued, even compared to other blockchain gaming tokens, which are 80 to 90% down from all-time highs. So I've accumulated a nice bag, and I plan on holding on to it for the next few years at least. Now, I announced this AMA in my last video on Decimated, and we had 91 questions sent in, which is a record for this channel. And I went through and chose my favorites. I chose my top 5, and each winner already received 100 USDC. So thanks for sending those in, and congrats there. Now, then I added some of the other questions that I liked later in the interview, and we talked all about what it will be like to play Decimated. We covered their plans for the token and more games down the line. This was a fantastic conversation the whole way through, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed hosting it. Welcome to DeFi Now, everybody. I'm Josh Cross. Here with me is Stephen Arnold, the CEO and founder of Fracture Labs, the developer behind Decimated. Stephen, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for getting me on the show. I really loved your last video that you did last time. It was hilarious.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a lot of fun making it. And we did, we planned this ahead of time to collect questions for this interview. And we had 91 questions sent in. So that's the most I've ever gotten for one of these. So that's really awesome. Definitely a lot of community interest in this. And I was the one who chose all of the 5 questions. So if you're upset that your question wasn't chosen, you can direct that hate towards me. So let's just jump into it. The first question that we have here is, can you explain the possibilities of playing Decimated as a solo player compared to playing in Decimated in groups, and whether or not you plan to include a system where people can play together, like parties, clans, guilds, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, we're developing an open world sandbox, which is kind of similar to PlayUnknown's Battlegrounds or Fortnite or Arma, for example. So it is possible for you to play the game by yourself, and then you can undertake different types of missions. And obviously, because we have the token aspect, you can also play to earn the game, and you can buy your own vehicle, you can customize your character. So you could do that by yourself, and you can choose if you want to go around and shoot other players, or if you'd like to do PvE content, which is like mining resources and then transporting them from point A to point B, that kind of thing. However, if you're going to be going around shooting other players, you're probably not going to last very long, because you are going to meet up with gangs of players that are going to be playing the game in groups. And generally, that's what people do when they play these kind of games. You know, they team up with their friends. They're either on Discord or they're on TeamSpeak. They might spawn into the world in different locations. They'll coordinate with each other where they're going to meet up, and then they'll all go to that point in the map, and then they'll do missions together. So while it is possible to play the game by yourself, there will be a lot of people that will be playing games with their friends. And also you're going to meet a lot of people inside the game as well, because we want the game to be kind of like a social experience rather than just like a deathmatch experience where people are going around shooting each other. You know, if you've played DayZ or Arma, Altus Life, there's a kind of heavy focus on the role play aspect and the fact that you're in the world and you might meet up with strangers and you don't know if they're friendly or hostile. So we want to have that kind of social aspect where if you see a stranger on the horizon somewhere in the distance, he's maybe salvaging some wreckage of some technological wreckage, for example, you could either shout to him or you could throw a grenade at him or whatever. So you can choose whether you want to be friendly or hostile, but you have to also be careful that other players whether they're friendly or hostile as well. So yeah.
Is the whole world going to be PvP, or are there going to be like safe zones when you're playing it?
No, so we've got it divided into lots of different areas. So new players will start in the safe zones, the green zones. So there won't be any PvP in those areas. It'll be illegal to shoot other players, and we might even disable the ability to shoot other players in those areas. If not, then certainly if we enable players to be able to shoot each other inside the green zones, then the penalty will be really high. Then you have the kind of general wasteland area where anything kind of goes, but you're not really allowed to shoot other players. You're not allowed to do random deathmatch. You have to role play. So you unless you can actually go up to the players and you could hold them hostage. You could tell them to get on their knees and put their hands above their head and, that kind of thing. And then you could rob them. You could steal their vehicle. You could steal some of their items. You could steal their weapon. You could leave them with nothing. You could take all their clothes and then just leave them in the middle of the wasteland. So yeah, there's lots of different types of gameplay that you can do there. And then the red zones, which are the full loot PvP areas, that's where the highly experienced players who want to take higher risks for a higher reward will go. The thing is, if you go to those areas and you die, then you'll essentially lose everything because you took the risk of going in there. But that's where we're actually going to place all the high risk, high reward missions. So more experienced players will go there. They'll have to equip their character, get enough ammo, recruit lots of people on their team to be able to do those types of missions. So yeah, essentially the PvP areas will be the most difficult to reach. And then the PvE kind of like resource collection and that kind of stuff will be more kind of around the green zones where players can do that kind of activity without having to worry about other players trying to kill them. But it's still going to happen. So, you have to be careful.
What happens when you die? What happens to your character?
So when you first start the game, if you die, then you'll respawn back in a green zone with limited items. If you've been playing the game for a while and you've built a base, we're actually going to have respawn nodes where players can choose where they want to respawn. Let's say that they've got some kind of storage facility or a storage box where they have some of their items. They've got like access to an ATM, so they can get some currency,
like the apartments that you can get.
Exactly, apartments and the wasteland bases. So players will be able to choose to respawn in those areas, or they could just choose to respawn in a random green zone around the map. So yeah, with regards to what happens to your stuff when you die, it will be dropped where you die and you can run back to that area to pick it up. But we're also going to include an insurance system as well, where players can have their items restored back to them for a small fee, so yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. But if you're in like the high risk zone, would you still be able to get insurance on your items? Like in the red zone?
We're still discussing that with the game design team, but we think that, no, we feel like it should be, the high risk, high reward areas should be real high risk and real high reward, So anything goes in those kind of areas. We want to give people the freedom to choose what type of gameplay experience that they want to have. And if they want to take risks, then they are free to take risks. But for the green zones in the general wasteland area, it'll be optional. One thing that players won't be able to do is to steal your vehicle or steal your your sacred NFT weapon, for example, and then take it out of the game and then sell it. So we're designing systems where you could lose a vehicle to another player, but then when that other player is driving it around, it's going to cost a lot more for him to repair it and refuel it. So the incentive for him to keep it is a lot lower than the person who actually owns the item, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to drive it around, they're going to crash it into a wall, and then it's going to be damaged. And then the original player can then restore it back into his garage. If he's got insurance, he can either he can restore it to his garage 100% restored for a premium fee, or restored in its damaged state for a nominal fee. And then they can manually repair it with items that they've collected in the wasteland or items that they purchased, NFTs and things like that on the marketplace. So yeah, we basically give the players the freedom to choose how they want to restore their items that might have been stolen by the players.
Yeah, that was a question that I had in my video. I was wondering, like, if you get out of your vehicle to go explore something, if somebody hops in and drives around, you lose your NFT. So yeah, I think that's a really cool system that you have in place to protect against that. That's cool.
We've been thinking about it for a long time, and obviously if people are buying items on our marketplace, we wouldn't want somebody to have bought an item that then he says, like, this is mine, I paid for it, and then for somebody else to just come and shoot you in the back of the head and then steal it. But at the same time, we don't want to limit the types of gameplay experience people can have. We don't want to say you're not allowed to shoot people in the head and steal their vehicles. I mean, we can set the rules and say you're not allowed to do it. But then we've also got the cop aspect, right? So if you do that kind of illegal activity, then you're making yourself a criminal. Then you're going to have a bounty on your head. You're going to have the cops after you, the bounty hunters, other players. And we'll have a notification system that this player is going around shooting other players and stealing their stuff. We just put a target on his head, and then everybody will go for that guy, and then keep on killing him and keep on making him respawn until he has nothing left and he'll get fed up, So yeah,
that's cool. If you like commit a crime, does there have to be a witness for you to get a bounty, or does it just get added from committing the crime?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, Decimated is set like 160 odd years in the future when we live in a kind of like highly surveilled world. So I think that there will be certain areas where if you commit crimes, then you might be able to get away with it. But there's going to be certain things that you do. Let's say if you rob a bank or a shop, for example, automatically, the moment that you draw your gun, the alarm will sound, and essentially you'll be stealing something from that certain location. And obviously, the longer you stay with your gun held to the NPC or the player that's running the marketplace, for example, the more you're gonna steal. But the higher the risk is that the cops are going to arrive and then be like, stay where you are, put your hands on your head, get on the ground, that kind of thing, right? So, we'll see. I think that we'll probably have areas where you can commit crimes and get away with it, and other areas where if you commit crimes, then you're instantly going to be marked as a criminal for it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, let's get to the next question. Can you describe the promotion system of the game, and how does the level up and progression work?
Yeah, sure. So we're still working on the game design document aspect. We've been working on the documentation for several years on the role system and the skill system. But essentially, when the players choose what type of role that they play inside the game, which is determined by the clothes that they wear, that's when they'll be able to access certain items, certain vehicles, and certain skills that they can unlock by just doing them. And then the more that you do those items, it's a repetitive task, for example, the more that you'll level up, and then you'll be able to do them faster, and you'll also be able to unlock higher tier items and vehicles and things like that. So that's how we're planning it.
So there's a lot of incentive to specialize in something, because then you'd be able to earn more and, do better missions for that skill.
Exactly. So if people are going on a mission, for example, they'll say, we want to have like a level 2 or a level 3 medic, somebody who can heal other players a lot faster than a level 1 medic, for example. But obviously then the fees would be slightly higher because they've got more experience. So the more experienced players would charge more to other players for the services that they offer in game. So yeah. Cool.
All right, next one. Are there going to be any esports competitions, like publicly viewable ones? And if so, how are you getting other partners to help you develop it and market it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've always wanted to make a game that's fun to play and fun to watch. And there is a huge competitive element to the type of game that Decimated is. It's a third-person shooter, essentially, at its core. We just add in the role play aspects to it. But we plan to have PvP deathmatch zones where players will actually get sent to if they commit crimes, kind of like the Running Man or a battle royale scenario. Is like, okay, if you're a criminal, then you're not worth anything to society, so you're sent off to this area to go and fight other players. And we're thinking about doing that the same way that PUBG does it, where people start with nothing and then they have to scavenge around the environment, and they've got to find an item and then like find some weapons, find some bullets, find some body armor, find a helmet, that kind of thing. And then they've got to basically fight until the last man standing. So in that kind of aspect, yes, we can definitely have some competitions. But the thing is, like, since 2019, we've been working in the prototype version and the pre-alpha version of Decimated, where we had a gameplay mode that was called Kill for Crypto, where we had essentially just like the combat systems for the characters. We didn't have any vehicle systems at this point. It was really just third-person shooting. And every time you got a kill from another player, you would win 1 token from that player, right? So essentially people were just killing each other all the time and just taking 1 token from each other. And then at the end, there'd be a leaderboard to see who got the most kills. And we also plan to have like some kind of staking system. I'm not sure if we can do this because it kind of gets us into this kind of like murky legal area with like esports gambling and betting and stuff like that. But certainly it's something that, we could look into, is like where players could actually spectate on what's happening in the game and then place bets on who they think is going to win. And, we can have competitions and rewards and things like that. We could have like gamer guilds, like playing together in teams. Like these days, anytime that I go to a video game conference, I always walk around the public area and see like a row of like 5 guys on one side, a row of 5 guys on the other side with their big flag from what country they're from and their guild name and stuff like that. I would love to see that in Decimated, once we're at a later stage of development, for sure. That would be amazing.
Yeah, awesome. And then next question I've got, this is question number 4. Why did you decide to go for a 1 token approach as opposed to the 2 token system that many play to earn games go for?
I mean, it's always been our plan to just have 1 token, and we felt like 1 token was enough to manage. We started prototyping, I started writing the game design document for Decimated in 2017, and then we started development in 2018. And we were we were kind of prototyping with Ethereum back in the old days, which even back then was kind of like slow and expensive. And I know that now the market is kind of matured, and there's a lot more play to earn games and NFT games and things like that. And we're certainly looking to see what other games are doing. But at the moment, we feel like just having one virtual currency is enough for players to play to earn and spend on upgrading their character and, purchasing NFTs and things like that. So yeah, but we'll look at it, because I know that some people discuss like governance tokens and things like that, but it needs some more research.
Yeah. And that makes sense, since you guys were so early, that there's, a lot of newer games have all these other games that they can build off of and ideas. So it makes sense that you only have the currency. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you guys do decide to launch a governance token.
Well, one thing that you need to bear in mind is that, like, while we do have one central currency as the means of exchange, it's our virtual currency in the game. We do have essentially soft currency in the game that players can either buy it or they can acquire it through playing, consumables and other types of things that they can sell on the marketplace. And it's not a cryptocurrency; those are not tokenized items, but they can still accrue value and be sold to other players, because essentially players can do certain activities where they can collect resources and then process them into other items that other players want to buy. So while they're not tokenized, they're still worth something. So we have a hard currency and a soft currency in that kind of sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen other games do a similar thing, where you have, a currency where, if you're just buying, cheap consumables, people might not want to spend a token that's actually, a valuable token, the DIO currency, whereas having like a separate in-game currency that's just for that. And the same reason you wouldn't like mint an NFT for consumable items. You would only mint them for, valuable items. So yeah, that makes sense. Let's go to the last one. This one is actually, I was really curious about, because now that Steam is kind of more anti-NFT gaming and crypto gaming, how is that changing your plans?
Well, I mean, it changes our plans slightly, because obviously we wanted to put the full game on Steam. But what we decided to do after Steam announced their blanket ban on blockchain games was just to release a blockchain-free demo on Steam that we can use for marketing purposes. So we allow people to just play the demo, which will be developed. It's being developed right now, whilst we're also working on the Solana integration with the NFTs. So essentially, players on Steam will be able to get a feel for the combat and the vehicle systems and explore the world, but they just won't have that additional functionality of the NFT system and the withdrawal systems. So they would just be able to do some kind of like PvP combat, for example, to get a feel for it. But then if they want to play the full game, they can go over to our website or potentially some other distribution platform that we might distribute on. And I totally understand why Steam did the blanket ban of blockchain games. Is not just because of all the scammy projects. I think it's also because they're not getting any revenue from those projects, because a lot of them are free to play and they're generating revenue from the sale of the tokens and the NFTs, which are run on a blockchain. So I think the Valve want a piece of that action. So no doubt in the next few years, we're probably going to see Valve chain and Ubisoft chain and lots of other chains in the near future.
Yeah. And so would the demo version be a separate instance from the main game version?
Yeah. I mean, it would be separate servers. So it would be the same game, but with limited functionality. But it would still give you a good feel for what the gameplay is all about. And also, if it's a demo on Steam, then it would probably be session based. So you'd only be able to play it for like 1 hour a day, for example. And then if you want to play the full game, head over to our website, and then you can start playing with the real players.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. So yeah, that's the 5 questions I have. If we have time, I think we still have a little bit of time. I've got some rapid fire questions for you, some other ones that I liked from the community. So let's just get started. The first one, are you going to play as a cyber cop or a human survivor?
I'm always going to be a human survivor. I mean, that's how I roll, like I've been struggling like with this project for so long. And, so when I play the game, I'm going to be the guy that's going to struggle in the game world. I'm not really an authoritarian type of figure, but I want to give people that like to play that role, like who take the rules really seriously and are really pedantic and like to boss people around and things like that. I want people to have that role. It's not that I want to be bossed around. I just want to be a rebel. I want to be rebellious, So, I definitely think that, I'm more of a kind of like infiltrator type of hacker guy, So I would be like the guy that goes along, maybe not getting into the heavy weapon battles, but maybe like being a kind of lookout, like a sniper, for example, would be good. I like the sniper roles. Being able to be invisible for a short period of time, so you can like sneak behind people and then like hack a door. That's the type of human citizen I want to play.
Yeah, I'm actually the same way. I always prefer stealth roles and going around things like that. So you're going to be the guy breaking people out of prison or unlocking their explosive collars and stuff once they get out.
Yeah. This is an aspect of gameplay that I'm really looking forward to getting integrated. Is the system where, like, once there's a player that's been thrown into prison and he's locked in there and he has to wait for the timer for him to be released. Maybe he's like, having to like, hack away at some rocks, kind of like labor camp style, being able to arrive to the back wall of this prison complex and then set an explosive and then blow the wall open and then go inside and then like stealthily get your friends out, like, and then, rescue them from jail is like one of the coolest things I think people are going to enjoy playing.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially if your guild members are in prison, not having fun, just hacking away. There's going to be a lot of incentive to go and break them out. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Next one is, are we going to see Decimated on PlayStation or Xbox?
In our roadmap, yes, it is planned for us to publish the game on console as well. We have to really see at that stage, because that'll be a few years from now. You're talking like 2, maybe 3 years from now. We have to see like what the sentiments are from those first party console manufacturers with regards to the blockchain and NFT thing. What I would like to do is to be the first AAA game studio that's successfully launched and integrated blockchain technology and shows that it's like a real successful business model. And to show the legitimacy for the project, so then we can actually publish on Xbox and PlayStation. So it's something that we're planning for. And I mean, with the experience I've got working in the games industry, I know who would help us with the porting. We developed the game on PC initially, and then we work with partners that specialize in porting games to PlayStation, Xbox. Now, of course, when we're using Unreal Engine, we can easily export a build of the game onto different platforms. We could do a mobile version, we could do a console version, whatever, right? But obviously the games still need to be optimized. And with consoles, you need to do a lot of compliance checks, like making sure that the PlayStation logo is in the right place and that it's the right scale and that you don't have text that's like overlapping, text boxes and things like that. Compliance. This is how I started my career in the games industry, was doing testing, QA testing and that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot of work involved in porting a game from PC onto the console. So it is planned. It should happen in the next few years. But really, we have to see if Microsoft and PlayStation will actually let us publish the game because of the NFT thing. But let's see. Hope, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then you also have to figure out how they're going to integrate wallets into the system, because if it's on PC, it's easy to just use existing ones. But yeah, it'll definitely be different. So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. On either way, I mean, I'll play on PC or PlayStation. I don't really mind. Next one is you touched on this a little bit, but is there going to be a single player story mode?
I mean, I think that what we're probably going to do is we're going to have lots of different types of missions that players could do by themselves or with other players. But we're not planning to have like a single player narrative, like with a beginning, a middle, and an end kind of story, like that kind of thing. But we're going to be doing a lot of environmental storytelling where players can discover the world and then discover some kind of story and lore, for example. But they can do that themselves or with other players. But certainly, it's a very popular brand already. People really like Decimated, so I think that we could probably do some kind of like side games. And in fact, that actually reminds me about another thing that we're planning to do next year. In around May next year, we're going to start production of a linear single player story campaign, which is going to be completely different from Decimated stylistically. It's going to be like a retro point and click adventure video game, kind of inspired by Monkey Island and Day of the Tentacle, 90s style graphics, old ad-lib sound blaster types of sound effects and music. We'll have like voiceover actors as well that will be like telling the story, narrating the world, narrating the story as you go through it. And what we'll do is we'll reward players for completing achievements inside that. And we're probably going to do a browser-based version of that. And that's something for players to play while they're waiting for the alpha version of Decimated. So while Decimated is going to be released in its demo form in Q2 of 2022, Obviously, the alpha version won't come out until sort of late that year or 2023. So we're going to have other games that will be more kind of like linear single player campaigns. So yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Will those be like play to earn and integrate DIO in them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like Fracture Labs from the beginning, our vision has always been to have like an ecosystem of games where there's interoperability with the tokens and the items. And I know that a lot of people have been talking about interoperability of NFTs in games and like how wouldn't it be amazing if an NFT was usable in every single game that you ever owned, which I think is an impossible thing to ask. But from our perspective, building things from the ground up, we're basically building the foundations with Decimated and DIO being at the center of our ecosystem. And then we're going to have lots of other brand extensions, like other games, whether they're small mini games, mobile games, browser games, or other hardcore PC games and console games. But there'll be interoperability between them. And that's what we're planning. It really is to do that. So it's going to take us a few years to build what we're trying to build. But the strategy is to work with existing partners that already have games that they've been developing for several years. And then we essentially partner up with them or buy their company, buy their IP, and then we would essentially bridge them together. So then the vehicles in their game will work in Decimated and vice versa. Obviously, this requires a lot of work, but that's really what we're planning.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's something that is great for the players when you have an NFT that has, use in multiple games. I think it's definitely a lot easier to do that if it's, one developer and it's among that developer's games as opposed to, in unrelated games, especially when you talk about different blockchains, then it's pretty much, it's
complicated. It's very complicated. Yeah, exactly. Very complicated.
Cool. Next question I have is, are there going to be like a day and nighttime or seasons of the year in the game?
There will be a day and night cycle, yes. And during the day, if you're out in the desert, then you're going to be affected quite dramatically by the heat. So you're going to want to get shelter. Then at nighttime, it's going to be extremely cold. So again, you'll want to get shelter. So we're going to have, because of the survival aspect of the game, your player is going to have statistics, your health bar, your shield power, your hunger level, your sickness level, right? So you can get sick if you get too cold or if you get too hot, then you can actually fall ill. If you go into toxic water, for example, you can also fall ill there as well. Then you can get medics to give you medicine, things like that. But then if you take too much, then you get addicted to it and then it affects your performance, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, there will be a day and night cycle. And we've always wanted to have a weather system. But the thing is that like, we're so ambitious with this project, we want to put everything in. But it all takes time and it all costs money, Mm-hmm. But we have already been looking at the possibility of having dust storms in the desert where essentially people will be able to see on the horizon that there's a dust storm coming. And so there'll be events inside the game world where players are going to be like teaming up together. It's like, oh shit, we need to get inside because there's a dust storm coming towards us. Like, quick, get inside because you're going to lose health if you stay outside, So we're planning to do that. So different types of weather systems for sure. We also were thinking about having like natural disasters certain areas, because obviously the world is decimated, like we want it not just to be like an industrial apocalypse, we want it to be like an ecological apocalypse as well, where there's been lots of volcanoes, there's been lots of earthquakes, there's been like natural disasters and that kind of thing, so while having things like floods and things like that in the game, in a multiplayer online game, it would be really complicated, although it would be really cool because nobody's ever done that before. But the ability to do earthquakes, where you could essentially have the certain sections of land that could tear open randomly, and it's not something the developers even coordinate. Like, we could program this to happen, like in random places. I think they do this in Fortnite actually, but it's just like a decal that's like on top of the landscape. It just shows you like, oh, there's like the earth splitting. So we were thinking about doing that. I mean, it's an idea that we've got in our game design document about the possibility of that happening, where let's say the players have built a base in a certain area of the land and then there's an earthquake and it just so happens to go right through their base. It's like, well, nobody did this deliberately. It just kind of happened. Yeah, but that's life, but, people are like, oh, my house is destroyed, but it's okay. I'm going to rebuild it. And this time I'm going to rebuild it better, so yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, the last question I have is, are there going to be any plans for expansions like DLCs or like map extensions and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, we've been scaling the map up gradually over time. We didn't start the game with a 64 square kilometer map from the beginning. Our vision was to create an open world map that size eventually. But we started with like small arenas, like you've been seeing in the videos in the background. They're like probably like 200, 300 meters square. That's it, right? But then we expanded out to like a 2 square kilometer map. Now we're working on larger maps with more points of interest and different types of environments to explore. We've got like some steel mills and factories to explore. We've got like some abandoned malls and lots of other kind of interesting areas that people will be able to explore. And eventually what we will do is we will have like one kind of map that will be kind of fenced off by probably mountains, for example, or debris where you can't cross it. But we plan to be able to unlock other areas of the map and then expand the map in a certain area. Or we would have other servers that are other areas of the map that players will be able to access and then choose if they want to load out in this area here or this area here. And we could probably have like a settings menu where you can actually see, let's say, like the map of North America, and then you can choose which area of the map you want to go into, right? Like Washington or Boston or Vegas or something like that. Again, like super ambitious, but that's what we'd really like to see. And one thing that I've discussed with the dev team, although they've told me, let's keep our feet on the ground here. I was like, why don't we just like we could have like a procedurally generated Earth so that you could actually fly quite high up into the air, right above the map, right? So you're so far away that you can't see all the characters and players running around, right? But you can see the curvature of the Earth. You can't fly so much out into space, but you can fly high up enough that you can see the curvature of the Earth. And then you could essentially fly over to another area of the map that we've developed. This is something I would really like to do, but it is really complicated. And I don't know if we'll be able to do that. But we'll see. I would love to, but it might be that we'll just have like separate servers, separate maps. And then if we find some way to blend them together with this kind of like procedural world concept, it would be really cool. So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Now we finished all the community questions that I had, but I have one last question for you. Now that your token has launched and you have that kind of big, I know how massive of an undertaking it is to get that out. What's the next big thing that you're looking forward to, or that you think the community can look forward to?
Our next big milestone is the NFT marketplace, which should be ready in Q1 2022. And then the pre-alpha demo, which is essentially what we've been working on for the last couple of years, will be polished, and we should have that ready by Q2 of next year. So those are our two next big milestones. And a lot of people get confused when they see our roadmap and they say, what, this game isn't coming out until 2024, which is ridiculous because, the game has already been playable for a year. So we're releasing the early version of the game, but early polished next year. And then what we're going to do is we're going to roll out updates on a regular basis until we get to the alpha version, and then we get to the beta version. Essentially, we're going to be working on this game for several years to come, but we're going to release it as soon as possible, and then just roll out updates, new features, new roles, new skills, new missions, new areas of the map, that kind of thing, right? So it's a long process.
Yeah, and that way it just kind of remains fresh, and people can already jump in and play it. So that's awesome. That's a good way to do it, I think. Awesome. Well, that's everything that I've got here. Thanks for coming on the channel. This has been really awesome. I think we went a little bit over time, but honestly, it's been really interesting, really great to talk with you.
You too, man. Thanks very much. Happy to chat anytime. And let's play the game together next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks very much.